I think one important thing about the project was formlessness. Can architecture be felt? First prompt was that the client himself put it out that he was okay with not having elevations, he was okay with not having forms for the house. That one line struck. It was a perfect opportunity for me to explore something where the client actually, in a very simple way, is accepting that formlessness is fine with my house. Hi, I'm Veeram Shah. I'm the founder and principal for Design-Ni-Dukaan. We are a design studio based in Ahmedabad. It's a single story bungalow. There are 3 guest rooms and there are 4 master suites. The plot area is around 4 acres, out of which I think we have covered 23,000 square feet for the house. I'll be taking you through the project and the spaces, and I'll try to cover as much as I can. If you have any queries, you can reach out to us and put it in the YouTube comments. And I remember initially, so there is this bhajan by Kumar Gandhar. It's a Kabir bhajan called Nirbhay Nirgun. So which is fearless and formless. So this is what Kabir is saying, that why should you worship the outline of God? Why not just worship his attributes? So this was something that gave a start to the project as to can we create spaces in a way that they can be felt. When we started the project, the client was almost 16. So basically he comes from the village. His father was a farmer, and then he shifted to Bombay. This house was basically him coming back to his roots, him giving back to the place that he was born. The client, his wife, and they have 2 sons. Like he wanted a house where he could find the peace to retire to. It was a bare site. When we started designing, we realized that we'd have to create a context. This is where you enter from. This is the north. This is the parking space. You get out here, and then this is where the main entry point is. So this is the part of the site that we reserved for the house with extended landscape, and then this is the part that we have been developing as the forest and the vegetation that I spoke about. What we wanted to do was diminish scales. So when you actually enter the site, you don't realize that there is actually something there. And this was something that we did with all the excavated soil. It was used to create these mounds. So all the external walls are retaining walls because we had to take the load of the soil coming onto the walls. So when you stand at different levels on the house, you don't realize what level you are at. This creates nice exit points where you are at one level. If you climb a stair, you come at other level, and you still have landscape which is flowing out to the external parts of the house. One thing he was very clear was that there should be a private part of the house and there should be a public part of the house. We were studying a lot of Corbusier's paintings that time. So if you see his paintings, you will find these imperfect curves, curves that you can't define. The whole house was designed in 2 dynamic curves and 2 static lines. This is one curve that I came up with, and this was the second. When I drew the lines, I did not want them to touch each other. It was very interesting that where the curves meet is what marks the entrance. It's that little space where you enter the house from, and then yet it starts expanding. So the entrance was marked by the waiting area, and then the kitchen had to be common. So then this would be the kitchen which would cater on both sides. So the kitchen caters to the living space, which was the living room and the dining. So this space again opens up to 2 courts. So the first, I think, pause is where the mandir is. So when you look out, it is a concrete cylinder which sort of doesn't touch any of the walls and yet opens out to the backdrop of the landscape. As you move around the house, the spaces start expanding. So we had marked this curve, and I realized that I would always want gulmohar tree here. It's very interesting that once you exit from the living room, you come out to this transition space, which is the client's favorite area. So we have a swing here, and there's a frame So the frame actually captures the gulmohar. So now it's become a ritual that every time they go to the room, they sit on the swing for a while, look at the gulmohar, have a discussion, and then enter the room. We wanted to create something that seems like it's just flowing out of this. And there's a borsal here. So this is a plant that takes 15 years to grow. But when it grows, both of them together are going to sort of create this beautiful dance of two trees coming together, creating the shadow, creating this little picnic space under it. These are the main private suites for the client where you enter from, and they open out to landscape on this side and then on this side. We decided to be very simple with all the materials that were used, and kota is staple. While all the internal areas had to have like a polished kota, we realized that let's play with patterns in the outdoor spaces. Also, all the waste was used in the little transitional spaces of the houses. So it was almost utilizing every bit of the stone that was on site. This wing marks the guest rooms. So in case the guests would want their own privacy, they would have their own landscape spaces adjacent to their rooms. As you further move along this, you come to the most private spaces of the house, which are the two master suites for the son's rooms, which is marked by a court in the center. This passage is marked by the turrets, which became very interesting in terms of the light coming in, the shadows changing. This is a section through the son's room. So what we've done is we've tried to create these pockets to get in more light into the room. We wanted to do very staple basic materials for the house, and teak is something that I have been exploring with in various ways. So this whole area marks the recreation spaces of the house, which hold the pool, the steam sauna and the changing rooms, the pool lounge and the gym. The gym was placed in a certain way that the client has access directly to the gym and he wouldn't have to walk through the passage to enter. Basically, I wanted to create a contrast. Like you have one harsh material, you have a softer material. It is the terracotta that sort of guides you through the house. As you move ahead, you see the same color in landscaped areas. And eventually I remember that we're an intern, and so obviously you're doing a blue pool. That color, the simplicity of the materials, having one color just flows in the house, and like the three little things bind everything together. We need the bathrooms to have the simplicity that the structure has, and no stone or an Italian or a tile would do justice to these bathrooms. And same thing, we said let's do monotones, let's do micro concrete. We tried to play with colors in the bathrooms, we tried to play with textures, create that same simplicity, and then again we added these skylights in the bathroom which added drama to these materials and the simplicity of the bathrooms. I find concrete to be very humane. Concrete sort of takes the impressions of what it is shuttered with. We decided to do shuttered concrete in wooden slats. The logistics of getting a contractor from Ahmedabad to that village would sort of increase the project cost by at least 3 times. It's a large project. The client insisted that I work with a local contractor who had worked with before. And I insisted that he makes a sample wall for me to see first before I start with anything. Now when he made the sample wall, I realized that very interestingly, all the wooden slats would have that imperfection because they were done with hand. And this is not something that you can achieve. It is something that happens. And it was so beautiful that every time the shuttering would open, you would see something new. And that was not something I designed. So basically, I call it anticipated imperfections. This part is the public space that we had created. So this can host up to parties for 20 to 30 people. So this has the home theater in the basement. This is the party lounge which opens out to landscape, like a smaller court this side, a larger court this side. So this would be like a party lawn, where it could host larger concerts, and the mezzanine holds the artist lounge. So this is completely cut off from the house and yet connected to the house. That sort of gave us a very nice opportunity to create these beautiful panels which became a backdrop to the artist lounge. This part, this marks the service block. The cantilevered part was the only thing that was jutting out of the skyline. I realized that why don't we look at the spaces coming above the line of the wall as sculptures that are floating. We added these turrets, the mezzanine that his son wanted, then the staircase block came up. So when you see above this line, all these have become sculptures that sort of jut out from the tree lines. Metaphorically, it feels like if the service block was the only thing that was going to jut out, it would have been very lonely. Now there's a conversation between all the turrets, between the larger forms. It's almost like living, breathing architectural elements which are in conversation with each other. Structurally, we did not need a column at the entrance of the passage. But it would break the harmony of the columns that were happening, the grid of the columns. So again, engineering. I told the engineer, okay, let's do the column, but let it not touch the floor. So when you enter the passage, it creates a sense of curiosity as to why is this column not touching the floor. There are parts of the concrete walls which are getting diminished because the creepers are growing over it, the trees are growing over it. And it feels, it's a very beautiful paradox. And as it started, that architecture is getting taken over by nature, or the tangible that you created is getting eaten up by the intangible, which is such a beautiful thing that like it's almost non-architecture. I started the project. We started sketching or thinking about the project in 2013, and eventually it took a span of around 8.5 years to actually get everything done. And every time that it took a pause, there were new things that we started designing. So the whole growth of the project was extremely organic. The maturity of the project actually came by these little decisions. And also, as a designer, I've matured with the project. It's been a journey, to think that you would finish such a large project in a certain time. But I think certain things need that time. When I look back at everything, I think self-negation is something that I've come to accept. Through this process of the frustration of not getting the project done, it has sort of instilled a sense of humility in me. Imagine, like, the client was 60 when we started, now he's almost 70. When I see them sitting on the swing having their tea, looking at the Gulmohar, I feel like I've accomplished what I wanted to.